It's Monday, November 19th. Welcome to MarketFoolery. I'm Chris Hill. Joining me in studio today, it's the Monday crew. It's Jason Moser and Taylor Muckerman. Gents, how are we feeling?
Hey.
Ready for Thanksgiving?
Man,
yeah,
so ready.
We're going to get the dozens of listeners ready for Thanksgiving because we were looking out over the headlines today. And this is one of those days where there's nothing that leaps out as like, oh my gosh, this is the thing that we have to talk about. Here's the big earnings story, that sort of thing. So we thought, you know what? Let's help the dozens of listeners get ready for Thanksgiving, because what do a lot of people dread about Thanksgiving? The conversation. The conversation, because you're going to sit down at the table and someone's going to bring up probably politics.
Had a little bit too much mead before dinner.
Exactly. So we're going to arm the dozens of listeners with some things to talk about that aren't politics. And these are things that could conceivably come up because they are somewhat timely. Let's start with Facebook, because Facebook over the last week has become more and more interesting as we have these articles coming out in the New York Times last week. We've got various op-eds coming out, and we were talking right before we started taping, Jason, it really seems like the curtain is being pulled back on particularly the executive suite at Facebook, as we have these reports of, well, here's what they knew and here's when they knew it. And there are definitely some competitors and probably some investors out there who smell blood in the water.
I would imagine. I mean, I certainly look at Facebook as from an investor's perspective, a company where I've certainly changed my tune on leadership significantly. I think for a long time, I felt like Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg were a dynamic duo that really had a good idea of where they wanted to take the business, how they were going to get there. On the calls, they were always on point, paint a very good picture of a long-term strategy there. And not just based really on these articles that are out during this news cycle right now, but just based generally on what we're coming to find out about the company, what we know about Facebook in general, and sort of what social networking is doing to society on the whole. I've lost all confidence in this leadership team completely. Like, I trust them zero, not at all. And like, Facebook was not a company I was ever going to own anyway. It's just not something I'm a fan of. It's a pure advertising play. I get it. I think if I'm going to invest in advertising, I would rather own Alphabet. But for Facebook, it just seems like this dream of a more connected world being some sort of utopia has been just flattened on its ass so severely here in 2018. I mean, it's very hard for me to take a step back here and understand exactly how they change the narrative to get back towards this connected world is such a good idea, because I think what it does ultimately, it just exposes our how we just fall back into tribalism. I mean, everybody just falls back to what they really want to believe in anyway. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, and they prey on that. And I mean, because the engagement is the #1 metric that these companies like Facebook are gearing towards. And so they're great at keeping you on the site. But if things like this keep coming out to where you kind of don't ever want to go back to the site, that's the end of their business model in my mind, because, they do all the marketing for other companies to go to leave the site of Facebook. But where do you see advertisements to go to Facebook? Unless it's in your mind, you don't go to Facebook. And so I think with things like this popping out, and Jason's right, I'm on the same page of social media and the engineering of people's attention and only giving you articles that they think you're going to believe in. I think that's moving in the wrong direction, but we're such a far cry away from Sandberg being discussed as a potential presidential candidate in 2020 or 2024. And now you see the struggles behind the scenes here at Facebook.
You look at shares of Facebook over the summer getting close to $220 a share. Now it's down in the 130s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically down 40% from its high. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Taylor, because one of the most striking things to me over the past week has been sort of I don't know if there's a rift between Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg, but it certainly seems like the spotlight is on the two of them in a way that it really hasn't been before. And that's, when I think about this business and I think about Thanksgiving later this week, one of the things I'm interested to talk to sort of younger people in my family about is Instagram, to what extent they are using it, dropping it, all that sort of thing. But just when we talk about things within a company that are rising and falling, we first and foremost look at the numbers. When I look at Facebook, when I think about what's rising, it has nothing to do with numbers. It's the drama at the company, and it's the scrutiny on the company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to kind of hold my nose when I say this, because ultimately I do think that from an investor's perspective, and that's our angle here, of course, I think you're pretty hard-pressed to look at Facebook from today's levels and see it as a bad investment opportunity. And again, I'm not going to be going out and buying shares myself. I just don't like the company, don't like the leadership. But you don't amass a user base of that size on accident, right? I mean, they, for better or worse, have figured out a way to connect billions of people on this planet, and they've got a number of different ways that they do it. And so, and we talk about Facebook proper having sort of maybe its peak moment. And that may be. I mean, we're certainly seeing more advertisers going over to Instagram. But you still have Instagram, you have WhatsApp, you have Messenger. I mean, you have a lot of different ways the business can still make money. And I think you have to resort back to human behavior. And I think, generally speaking, I think people are narcissists. I know that probably sounds bad to say, but the fact of the matter is there are a lot of people that like getting out there and showing you what they had for lunch. I'm not sure why, but they just feel like it's important.
Hey, sometimes lunch is delicious.
It is. I get it. I know. I understand. I don't think that's going to stop. And I also think there are so many people where their behavior is already ingrained, and that Facebook and its properties are part of their everyday life in communicating in one form or another. So I don't think you're going to see meaningful disruptions to the network. I think you may see meaningful disruptions to leadership. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Sandberg say, you know what? I'm out, because I think Zuckerberg needs her more than she needs him.
Yeah, for her to come on in 2008 and just completely turn that business into a revenue and eventually profit-generating machine. I mean, I don't think Zuckerberg was doing that on his own.
Politically, with Google, I mean, she's got a lot of different ways that she can go about her future, and obviously he's tied to this business. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you're an investor, you probably have to be looking at Facebook and thinking this might be actually a pretty good opportunity. I think you just have to be aware of what's in store, and you have to know your line as to whether this is the type of company that you want to own.
So after Thanksgiving, of course, we've got Black Friday and all of the focus that happens on the retail industry. And something that we're starting to see evidence of is I'm not taking a victory lap here, but I feel like we called it.
Take a victory.
No. I feel like we called this out earlier in the fall, and that is, we always see late summer, early fall, large retailers coming out with their announcements of seasonal hiring. And one of the things we talked about on this show and on Motley Fool Money was, well, this will be interesting to see when, whether, and I'm not picking on Target, but when Target comes out and says, well, we're going to hire 100,000, 125,000, whatever the number is, seasonal workers. Macy's makes the same announcement. So does Walmart, et cetera. And at the time, we were saying, well, this is going to be interesting because we're now, it's not 2010. We're now in an environment where unemployment is incredibly low and wages are on the rise. And now it really seems, Taylor, like, companies are having a tough time hiring because, among other things, some businesses are throwing hiring parties to try and get people in the door. It's
wild to think, like, with unemployment as low as it is, under 5%, that it's going to be harder to find and more expensive to find this seasonal labor, as companies are going to have to bump up that potential $8 an hour up to, 10, 15. Amazon saying that they're going to advocate for that $15 minimum wage across the country. And I think that goes to a couple different points, maybe some competitive points of Bezos trying to flush out some people that can't afford $15 an hour. Either that or just because he foresaw a tighter seasonal employment market and was like, hey, here's our 15. If you can beat it, go work there. But if you can't, we're going to give it to you. And just they'll be the first season that they hire their own delivery drivers for seasonal delivery. So I think there's a lot more competition out there, and it's gonna be a little bit more costly. But you probably see a lot, maybe younger folks. Maybe this is the chance for some high schoolers to get out there and make an extra buck because they might not have traditionally been hired for this seasonal work.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the conversation's always steered around autonomous driving, robot cars, and all that stuff. And to me, like, this is by far and away I mean, at least in the near term, the more significant opportunity. I don't understand how all of these fast food restaurants at this point are not just fully autonomous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they're offering these bespoke menus where you just go in and I'll have a Whopper with, well, maybe with a Whopper, you tell them what you want on it. But I mean, generally speaking, you're getting like what you want based off this prefix menu. So, I mean, I don't know how many years left we have of these types of restaurants maintaining these big human workforces. To me, it seems like we're going more towards the automated direction anyway with them. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it's just kind of astounding that they haven't gotten there quicker. It's food. It's not cars. It's not like you got to worry about burgers crashing into each other. I mean, then just make another burger, right? I mean,
I have seen some robots flipping burgers. They're pretty fascinating
well, I mean, that stuff
to
is
watch.
there. It does exist.
Yeah, it does. And
I mean, like incredible. You see the soft drink carousel, for example. I mean, those are fairly automated now. I mean, I have to believe it shouldn't be that big of a leap.
It's certainly been a tough year for the restaurant industry in terms of the stocks. We've seen plenty of restaurants be taken private this year. But to your point, Jason, I do feel like the bar is higher for retailers than it is for restaurants, because people can have you would need to have a really bad experience at a fast food restaurant to not go back there at some point in the future.
Yep.
Whereas I feel like when it comes to retailers over the holiday season, they almost don't have the option about employing seasonal workers. They've got, because if you go into a Target and you're looking for whatever's on your list, if you're going to, if you find someone who's helpful to you, that's going to stick with you. You're going to go back. Whereas you're otherwise going to hold a grudge. I mean, I know people who have had bad retail experiences at, retailer X, and they said, that's it, I'm done. I'm never going there because I have other options. You
kind of expect, at least my perspective, you kind of expect a little bit more curt service at a fast food restaurant. You're just like, hey, here's what you want. Here's what you got. Yeah. Thank you. See you again in a day. And it'll only take 5 minutes to get you your food next time. Whereas retail, at least in person, definitely more personable. And you like the environment to be a little bit more structured so you can actually find what you're looking for, since you have to search for it. Whereas as a fast food or dining chain, it's all laid out for you right there on the menu.
By the way, I know that there's a science behind this, but it just occurred to me, the whole thing where, grocery stores will change up which aisles things go in, just because people get into a routine when they go to a grocery store. And so I don't know if it's every 12 months or whatever it is. I just know it happens because I go to the grocery store and I'm like, wait a minute, where you moved
Twilight Zone.
You moved the spice aisle? And that appears to be a phenomenon that only happens in grocery stores, because everything, the Target that's down here on Route 1, everything's the same, like in terms of the location, which is good. I don't want, like, if Target ever decided let's just screw with people, let's break up their routine, people would lose their minds.
Move the beer aisle.
Yeah, I think it's perhaps related to the size, because I will say, like, when I was in the golf business, and part of the golf business is running a golf shop at the country club, and so you can imagine that shop is significantly smaller than something like a Target, and we would switch that thing up all the time. But I also know that it takes maybe 5 minutes to walk through that entire shop, whereas if you go to Target, you're like, oh man, I've got about 5 minutes. And if it takes me 5 minutes to even figure out that they changed where things were, then I mean, you've got a problem. Yes, I think consistency in that regard is something that they almost have to rely on. I mean, that has to happen.
Programming note, this weekend on Motley Fool Money, we've got our annual Thanksgiving special. And it is special because it's the only show that we have during the year that has a sound effect. We blow the entire sound effects budget on the one turkey sound. Also, on Friday's episode of Industry Focus, it's the return of Kyle Pounders.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Kyle Pounders, the man behind Excalibur, because Dan and I and Dylan Lewis met him earlier this year at South by Southwest. I talked about him on MarketFoolery. Dan and Dylan put together a great special episode of Industry Focus earlier this year, talking with Kyle and sort of the business of having a food truck and
the pay it forward burger.
Yes, and Kyle came to Fool HQ. Did you get a chance to partake in you were out of town?
Well, no, I had just gotten back in. It was funny. I was pulling out of the garage that evening, leaving, and I saw him parked there right on the side, and he was having a little car trouble, but I was able to stop and talk with him, and I tried to give him a jump start, but I think maybe it was a little bit more than was needed. But super nice guy. Just really enjoyed talking.
Great guy and a fantastic burger. So here's one more thing folks can talk about at the table at Thanksgiving if the conversation turns to politics, and that is entertainment. because most people like entertainment. And from a business standpoint, you pointed this out earlier today, Jason. I mean, the trend that we've seen over the past few years continues, and that is more and more people cutting the cord.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I mean, I certainly remember not all that long ago saying, hey, I want to keep the cord. I mean, I like having that optionality out there. And I mean, it came at a price. I mean, our Verizon bill every month for that option was going on, $150 for that option. And for me, what really changed my mind was when Hulu came out with this skinny bundle offering. YouTube has one very similar. And we're seeing more and more now that not only are these modern content providers coming out with those options, but we're seeing that the legacy providers are having to do the same thing. Really, it is changing the bundle, so to speak, but we are getting to a point where it feels like now that cost justification doesn't quite exist like it used to, unless you're willing to make sacrifices. And some people are, and that's fine. I mean, some people are very happy just to have that Netflix subscription, and that's all they really want anyway. But it used to be that really it was like either Netflix or cable. You had to choose. Now it's not so. I mean, it could be cable or any number of different apps and services that you want to piece together if you like sports, news, entertainment, whatever it may be. So, from the perspective of a consumer, it's really nice. You can get what you want when you want. But you're starting to pay for it. And I'm telling you right now, Netflix ain't lowering that price. They're not lowering that price, Chris. No, you're going to see more and more, whether it's ESPN Plus or Disney Plus or HBO or Netflix. Thankfully, Amazon is able to build their streaming service into the Prime relationship, and you don't really think about that, so to speak. Hulu, the prices are going to go up because that's just the direction that this goes. So we get back to kind of where we started. And I mean, I'm not sure what to make of all of that, but that's where we are.
Yeah, I guess the one cord you're not cutting is your internet cable, because that's the base of all of this. And so you still look at companies like Comcast and Verizon and Time Warner that are providing this internet service. I think that portion of the bill is probably going to go up a little bit more if people continue to cut the cable or the telephone portion of the bundle out. Maybe once Netflix or these other companies bump up against a little bit of a subscriber growth issue, maybe they could partner with Verizon. Instead of selling an internet cable bundle, you sell an internet Netflix bundle or something like that. And I'll be interested to follow the whole Comcast Disney situation here with Hulu, because Disney bought into the Sky Network and with Fox, and now they own 60% of Hulu, I think. Comcast still owns 30%. So a little bit of a competitive market there, owning the same bundle service. And so it'd be interesting to see if Comcast holds on to that or maybe ships it for a few $1 billion to Disney to give them 90% control and see how that plays out. But that's one of the more interesting situations, I think, in this whole cut the cord bundling situation.
What are you watching these days in terms of entertainment, whether it's streaming, or I'm assuming it's streaming as opposed to a traditional broadcast television show?
Yeah, I think so. I saw where the new season of Narcos is out on Netflix, and that, frankly, is the only series on Netflix I've ever really felt like I wanted to watch. Yeah. So I'll probably catch up on that. And then another one, I went digging back last week and on Amazon, and I mean on HBO too, but they have an old HBO series called Carnival, and it only went on for 2 seasons.
Oh yeah, I think.
But I had read some really good reviews about it, so I gave the first couple of episodes a shot. It's pretty compelling. I'm going to watch the story play out.
Yeah, Narcos. I just started the news. It's it's a new season, but also kind of a new direction. It's in Mexico now versus South America and Colombia. So two episodes in, and that's one of the few shows that I'm watching. Ozarks is over for the season, and Billions is over until the spring. So I'm all in on Narcos.
I just started rewatching the first season of Goliath on Amazon Prime.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I so enjoyed that series.
Is that Billy Bob Thornton?
It's Billy Bob Thornton, sort of down and out lawyer. And it is the first season. It's, as you've said before, Jason, a little dark.
Little dark.
It gets a little dark. Second season gets a little darker. But that first season is just phenomenal storytelling.
Speaking of phenomenal seasons, the one that stands out to me to this day, an HBO series called Boardwalk Empire. Season 3 of Boardwalk Empire may be the best season of anything I've ever seen. just the story that it told, and it incorporated a character. I think Bobby Cannavale is the actor who played Geppetto. Just a great story, good series. Season 3 of Boardwalk Empire, really on point. Man.
One of those shows where you have to watch one.
I was just gonna say it. I'm a little bummed that you said, season 3.
Yeah.
Well, so I got to go through the first 2.
You could probably watch season 3 and it would stand on its own. I mean, I would recommend the whole series. Now, with that said, each episode is as exhausting as like The Untouchables. I mean, it's like watching The Untouchables every time you watch an episode.
Day, yeah.
It's great, but you just got to commit like a year to it.
That's good. I feel like those are the types of things that you need to hear from friends who recommend series, because what people often hear is, oh, watch this, it's great. Mm-hmm. And then, the second level of information is, well, it's a comedy, it's a drama, that sort of thing. But I always appreciate when it's like, look, this is a great show, but you're going to need a nap after each and every episode.
Right. How much time does this guy think I have?
It is draining to watch this. It's great. It's phenomenal storytelling, and it's exhausting. Taylor Muckerman, Jason Moser. Guys, happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Chris.
As always, people on the program may have interest in the stocks they talk about, and the Motley Fool may have formal recommendations for or against, so don't buy or sell stocks based solely on what you hear. That's going to do it for this edition of MarketFoolery. The show is mixed by Dan Boyd. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.